Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
This is the Future Tech Podcast. I'm Alan Thomas, and today I'm joined by Henri Pihkala, co-founder and CEO of Streamr. Hey, how you doing?
Thanks, Alan, for having me.
Oh, no problem. Let's just jump on in. Tell us about Streamr and what do you guys do?
Sure. So Streamr aims to decentralize real-time data, basically. That means building infrastructure and tools to support that, and also building a marketplace where producers of data and consumers of data can meet and transact, basically. And actually, the first version of the Streamr Marketplace was launched last week at the Consensus Conference in New York. So the whole team is super happy about reaching that milestone. But of course, it only marks the start of things to come in the future.
And what led to the beginning of Streamr? What is it in your background that kind of led you to this?
Yeah, it's a pretty long journey and a fun one, actually. So personally, I have a background in software engineering, in which I hold a master's degree as well. And I've been working with real-time data for the past 10 years or so. I somehow found my way to the field of algorithmic trading, which is a very, very technology-intensive and data-intensive field. And I used to do tech in there for several years. And maybe there I realized that real-time data actually has value to a large extent to the fact that it's fresh. So it can actually be useful in an automation pattern. And of course, storing the history is useful as well for backtesting things and seeing how various models would have worked, were they running at the time, and so on. And suddenly, around the same time, people started talking about how the explosion of data will happen, how the world will be populated with IoT sensors and like massive data streams emerging. And somehow I kind of calculated 1 + 1 and saw that the same kind of patterns that were used in trading and the same kind of value that data had will be actually useful in all other fields that are now getting access to this machine data economy, in a sense. So we started to create something that was kind of Streamr 1.0, in a sense, a cloud platform for data sharing and real-time analytics and publish, subscribe kind of messaging. And that was around 2014. And at the time, we weren't yet thinking about decentralization or the blockchain. But around 1.5 years ago, we realized that, hey, this is actually the only foreseeable version of the future in which a data economy and data sharing can actually take place, because otherwise you have the friction that comes from difficult payments and difficult identity verification, and it's not really like machine to machine compatible. So we decided to take the expertise and the technology we had built and start working towards decentralizing the whole technology stack and the kind of ecosystem we wanted to build.
And so it sounds like you definitely have made a lot of changes from the first version up to what just launched last week. And what would you say the ultimate mission statement is for Streamr?
Well, it's aiming for the data economy where everyone and everything, meaning people, organizations, machines, and AIs, can monetize on the data they are producing, or the information or the added value they can add to data. So basically what we're building is a neutral common space for exchange of data to value. And this is, of course, a hot topic recently also due to the various data privacy concerns and the Facebook scandal and GDPR coming into effect and so on. So one of the main goals of Streamr is also to empower the end user to control their own data. Like if I'm driving around in a connected car, or if I have a mobile phone that is measuring something from the environment, I'd like to be in control of that data and control who can access it and perhaps monetize that data myself, instead of the current pattern, which is basically giving your data away for free for the big companies to sell to advertisers. And of course, they keep the money and give nothing of it to me as the consumer. So this is the kind of pattern that we want to help change in the future.
And would you say that the company's focus right now is just on individual consumers, or a mix of individuals and groups or organizations?
Well, perhaps in the early stages, the focus is more actually on the organizations, because getting to the individual and consumer level is a slightly longer road. That will require us to form partnerships with device manufacturers to enable the consumers to do the kind of technical part more easily. And whereas organizations already have the capacity to integrate to the Streamr platform or start consuming data from there for their own applications. So I think the consumer side is the big thing, and of course the focus of our operations on the long run. But at the same time, we need to realize that it takes a bit of time to get there, because first of all, the organizations involved or the device manufacturers, they need a bit of a mind shift to realize that they can actually gain a competitive advantage by transforming their products or digitizing their products in a way that empowers the end user. But this will also take a little bit of time and us showing them the way, in a sense. But in the end, they will realize that, look, if there's if you're buying a car and there's two cars to choose from, and otherwise they are similar, but like driving the other one costs you money, because it's a normal car. You have to pay for the gas and so on, and whatever data it produces, the car manufacturer gets and does whatever they want with it. But the other car, when you drive that car, you can actually earn money by getting the proceedings or the direct value of the data you're producing while driving around to yourself, instead of that going to the car manufacturer. So actually, the car manufacturer will be able to use that as a selling point and sell more cars, which more than offsets perhaps the value of the data. So these kind of patterns can emerge, but not only for cars, of course. This applies for mobile phones, smartwatches, like any connected device anywhere. If it empowers the user, it's automatically better than comparable devices that don't let you control or monetize the data.
Okay, and let's say I'm a new user coming to Streamr. What is that like day one? What's my experience in terms of signing up or getting started? What is that like?
Yeah, sure. One thing to point out here is, of course, that Streamr is middleware. So it's not an end user solution. So Streamr is basically for developers of applications, or perhaps users of a device. But in that case, the device interacts with Streamr like under the hood. So you might toggle a switch on your mobile phone that says like monetize my data, and under the hood, your phone starts producing data onto the Streamr network into a data product that's listed on the Streamr Marketplace. And as a user, you don't get in touch with that technology. In a sense, you can just see that you start earning tokens for your data. But as a developer, what my experience with Streamr would be when I signed up, I can see that there are various major components to Streamr. There's the marketplace, which basically lists what publicly available data is on the network. Then there's the network infrastructure itself, with which I can, as a developer, I can interact with via the API. I can produce data, I can subscribe to data in real time. And then we have this visual editor environment which supports prototyping of data processing chains. So I can basically drag and drop a data source in there. Then I can drag and drop connections from that data source to some analytics modules. I can calculate, for example, moving averages or variances, or set some trigger thresholds, or make charts or maps or whatever visualization kind of things in there. So that's one of the major components. Depends really on what I'm wanting to do, whether I'm approaching as a data consumer. Like I need some kind of data for my application. Maybe I have a taxi company and I want to see where people are at the moment, and that data might be available to me from, I don't know, mobile network operator, or ideally the users themselves sharing that data, and I could use that data to optimize my operations in the taxi company, so that my taxis would idle in areas that are have higher people density or whatever. So these kind of use cases are quite easy to come up with. So those are basically the main kind of starting points with the Streamr ecosystem: the marketplace, the editor environment, and then the underlying infrastructure, the Streamr network itself.
Okay, and in putting Streamr together, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you and your team have had to get over in order to bring it to this point?
Yeah, well, I think to this point, the challenge has mainly been with productization. So we used to be a very small team, just a couple of guys working on it. Last year, we managed to crowdfund the product, and that also meant that we were able to grow the team and actually start doing the things that we wanted to do and what we outlined in our roadmap and our white paper, and kind of start to think like, how do you make real-time data usable? How do you build the marketplace? The marketplace was the first kind of major component that we wanted to completely kind of build from scratch, and think about how the payments there should work. What are products? How do these data streams relate to those products? How to make them look nice? How to enable the data producer to easily receive the payment? How to make it flexible for the user, and how to tie all of that into smart contracts living on the Ethereum blockchain on the other hand, but also on the kind of existing infrastructure that we had. So it's a lot like a puzzle, trying to fit things together, and also think about the way forward, which for us is like incremental decentralization. So we started out with the centralized that the project is facing, and that's bound to take some time as well, a couple of years, but we'll get there.
So what would you say then are some of the main achievements then that you and your team have had up to this point?
Yeah, I think first of all, putting together the team. I'm really happy with the people we have on board. That's been great, and also realizing that in a crowdfunded project like this one, the technology itself isn't the only important thing. Also, the communication side is magnificently important, and many tech companies in this space make the mistake of not caring about that enough. So there's thousands of people, our token holders, who are interested to see how this project is developing and how this project is making progress, and like catering daily information to them is something that we have, I think, have now put in place in a reasonable way, and I'm really happy about that in particular. But of course, also launching the marketplace was quite a crunch. I mean, I think this team did like 6 months or more worth of work in 3 months or so. So we were really pushing it, but did actually manage to get it up and running in time. So we were working against a pretty hard deadline because we wanted to launch it at Consensus, which is one of the big events in the blockchain space. The other option would have been DevCon, which is in November. So we kind of have to choose between May or November. Obviously, November would have been easier because there would be at least double the time that we had. But, well, we decided to try by May and succeeded. So super happy about that as well.
And that brings up a good question, because when you're doing something like Streamr that hasn't been done before, how do you develop the criteria to figure out who would make for the best team members? How do you screen for that? I mean, you're doing, like you said, you're doing something that hasn't been done before.
That's a good question, and that's basically I don't know if there's any like winner recipe for that. I think just meeting people, seeing, like, finding what they can contribute to the project, and if they kind of have the energy and interest and maybe intellect to do what we need to do. So everything is new that we're doing, so we can't really post job ads like looking for an Ethereum developer with 5 years of experience. That's simply not possible, obviously, because all of this is new. But kind of seasoned software engineers, business developers who've worked with this kind of stuff before, work with data marketplaces or open data before, who understand how big enterprises think about things, how small startups and what kind of tools they need to make new kinds of products and so on. But I don't know, we're just playing it by the ear, I guess, and trying to meet the kind of people that share the vision and the passion for these kind of things, empowering people with data and deep diving into the technology of the blockchain and peer-to-peer networks on the tech side.
And when putting all of this together, when putting Streamr together, were there any developments or ideas that popped up, and you would have to say, well, that might be a little too much for this version, maybe in a later version, or maybe next year, or something like that?
For sure, maybe 95% of things are like that. Even though we have now a team of around 30 people or so, still, like, the kind of bubbling of ideas is so strong that we really need to focus on the core ones and the things we have promised to deliver. Otherwise, we just end up like creating new ideas and snowballing the whole thing to some unknown end result. But yeah, I mean, we have to focus. For example, we've only been working on the marketplace for this spring, and that also means that all the ideas we have for the editor environment, for example, have had to wait. But that's something that we'll be working on in the near future, kind of reworking the editor environment to have better usability and better support the use cases that we have in mind, like creating smart oracles for smart contracts and so on. So right now the editor is maybe a little bit out of fashion in that sense, that the marketplace is new and shiny and has the new brand and looks amazingly cool, but the editor environment is still kind of from the old days. So we'll get there.
So is that some of the updates or features we can expect to see in the next, 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, absolutely. Like on the business side, the focus will be on onboarding more data vendors onto the marketplace and so on, and forming new partnerships. But on the tech side, we now kind of got the marketplace nailed down. So the next steps will be to start reworking the editor, but also like going to the deep end to start building the next generation version of the Streamr network, the actual messaging infrastructure that's below the hood. But I'd say that in the next 6 to 12 months, the editor will get the revamp that it certainly deserves, and hopefully also the network layer will get the kind of next version 2.0 of sorts.
And so for developers who are listening, what's the big reason that they should come to Streamr?
Well, on Streamr, if they're developers of applications, then they will find the data that they need. If they're building a real-time data-driven application, then that's the place to go. So we want to be kind of the Amazon of data streams eventually. Of course, that requires a critical mass of data content to be on there. And since we only launched the marketplace last week, it will obviously take time to form. But that's the kind of end goal of that. But on the other hand, if you are a data producer, say you have an application that produces data, or maybe you're running a crypto exchange or whatever, building smart, maybe some machine learning algorithm that you want to apply to data or something like this, then of course Streamr offers you a possibility to monetize on the data or the kind of intelligence or algorithms that you're building. So that might be the incentive to join the Streamr ecosystem in that sense. Let's say you have a prediction algorithm, like a machine learning algorithm that predicts stock prices, for example. And what you can do in the Streamr ecosystem, since it's kind of open where anyone can ingest data as well as publish new data onto the marketplace, and you could put your algorithm in the middle. Like let's say you can consume raw stock market data from the Streamr Marketplace, then apply your prediction algorithm and sell the output, the predictions, as a new data product on the marketplace. So you're adding value to the raw data. You're refining the data content to contain more information or more intelligence. And some traders who are running their trading algorithms, they could take your predictions as inputs to those decision-making processes that those guys have going on in there. So in that way, it's also a monetization channel for whatever algorithms you can apply that are valuable to people interested in the data in that space.
Okay, and so Henri, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and the company, and if they want to get involved with Streamr?
Yeah, we have various channels. So the very first is probably to follow us on Twitter or join our Reddit group or our Telegram. And of course, you can also contact us directly, and we'll be happy to answer all the questions that anyone might have.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank you, Henri, for coming on and giving us all this great information about Streamr. And I'm sure folks will make sure to log onto the website and get more information to find out more about how to use it for themselves. And,
yeah, excellent. Thanks for having me. The website is at www.streamr.com. And of course, Streamr is fancily mistyped with an R instead of an ER in the end. So be careful there.
Oh, yes. Thank you for clarifying that, too, because a lot of people would have gotten confused.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, as a startup, we didn't have the money to buy Streamr, like with an er.com domain name, so we went with Streamr with an R in the end. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but somehow it also stuck up until this date. So that's what we have.
Oh, we understand. But again, like I said, again, thanks for coming on, and just thanks for spending your time with us.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. Catch you later. Bye.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.